It's important for people to know that in discrimination cases, we are not proceeding based on whether the contractor has or has not met a utilization goal. Instead, we are looking at a substantial, usually statistically significant pattern of one protected group getting treated much worse in the hiring process than the favored group, as well as other evidence from our investigations and interviews to draw that conclusion. So I don't want you to draw the assumption that somehow failing to meet the goal, one, leads to violation and something that we would sue for.
I'm delighted now to recognize my colleague from Indiana, Mr. Rokita, for your 5 minutes of questioning.
I thank the Chairman. Ms. Hsu, thank you for being here, picking up on the discussion that you referenced that with Mr. Fortney, or his testimony rather. Does a conciliation agreement, in your opinion, have the force and effect of law or not? Right? If there's a conciliation agreement, according to Mr. Fortney's testimony, that has a quota, that has a number in it, and that's violated, quote unquote, or that's not followed through, are there not consequences? Would you not enforce that somehow?
It depends on the other provisions of the agreement.
You wouldn't enforce a conciliation agreement?
It depends on whether there are provisions to enforce it. Yes, it depends on what's in it. Sometimes conciliation agreements.
Mr. Fortney, in your experience with conciliation agreements, what have you found with regard to my question?
Rigorous and demanding insistence by the agency that all the terms be met as scheduled.
Right. That's a contract. It has the force and effect of law. I certainly disagree with your earlier statement. And I'm concerned, as a person who used to run 5 agencies in a previous life, that the head of an agency would be that misinformed about the force and effect of an agreement that their agency enters into on almost probably a daily or weekly basis, and your ability to enforce and your intention to enforce such agreements. Would you say, speaking of your agency, that it's more efficient or less efficient than it was during the previous administration?
Definitely more efficient.
By what metric would you say that it's more efficient?
By looking at the number of audits that we do, by looking at the quality of the audits, by looking at the breadth.
How do you measure quality of the audit?
We measure quality in a number of different ways, depending on things that we call deficiencies, technical deficiencies, or other deficiencies, timeliness. We've worked very hard to reduce the timeliness, the time it takes for us to investigate cases, the amount of recoveries we get, the amount of jobs that we've recovered, whether we've been able to save money in litigation.
Let me stop you there at timeliness. It seems like an investigation, if it's an honest one, at least when I used to be responsible for hundreds of investigations, you weren't put on a time schedule because that could lead to short-circuiting, that could lead to cutting corners. An investigation takes as long as it needs to find the truth. That's what an honest investigation does. So I would question, and I appreciate what you're saying. In fact, I agree with it, and apparently other witnesses share the same feeling. What measured is what gets done, and you only have to ask my previous employees and current employees about what we do in terms of strategic planning. But you have to have honest metrics, in my opinion. One way to do that, I think, is to measure budgets, and we're going to pick up this discussion perhaps where the Chairman left it in your response to it. It's true that the President's fiscal year 14 budget request was around $27 million more than in the final year of the previous administration. Is that accurate? You questioned some accuracy, and I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about or not.
I don't know that to be the case, but if you say so, we can work off of that premise.
Well, I have figures of 81 million, for the record, 81 million in 2008 to 108.5 million in 2014. So assuming that's true, you're saying that you've gotten $41 million in financial remedies on behalf of 80,000 workers, $512 per worker.
I believe I said $57 million
Okay.
On behalf of.
But the previous administration got $171 million for 62,000 workers, $26.30 per worker. But you're saying there's a difference in how you measure that?
There is a difference, sir, because we do not count the amount of the value of a job, if we negotiate extra jobs as part of the conciliation agreement, which, by the way, is a contract. I think I was reading too much into your question, sir. We don't count the value of that job.
It's a contract meaning that you enforce it? My question was, do you not enforce the contracts? Because you said this will not be a quota, that these would be aspirational. And my question was, if you get into a conciliation agreement
Yes.
and it doesn't meet the number that's in the agreement, testimony said there's an actual number, will you not then enforce that agreement?
Well, it depends on what the agreement says. What we anticipate the agreements will
It says that there's a number that you
say.
have to hire so many people with disabilities and/or veterans.
What we
say.
will enforce, sir, is whatever deficiencies have not been worked on with respect to hiring,
Like if you
retention,
didn't meet the
and
number that's in the
outreach.
conciliation agreement, would you enforce on that?
We will not enforce on the goal or the benchmark alone, no.
Chairman, I yield back. I see them out of time.
Thank the gentleman.